a lot of complex feelings about a lot of different characters, especially when it comes to audio roleplays. I've been a fan of audio roleplays for a very long time, and I like a lot of different characters from a lot of different artists and creators. But I think Yuurivoice is one of the creators that I feel the most strongly about, like, all of their characters. There's only one Yuurivoice character that I think I don't like. And it's just because he's not my type. Not because, like, the story is not interesting. It's just the character's not my type, right? But recently I've been having very strong Auron thoughts. And let me tell you why. I recently realized that Auron and his plights and his little quirks hit a little too close to home. Just a little too close to home. It's honestly a realization that has wounded me greatly. But thinking about Auron and thinking about how I personally interpret Auron's character made me realize just how similar his, let's call them personal defects, are to me and myself. And I love that for him. I love that for me, too. We're just two fucked up little guys. Let me preface this by saying, I honestly don't really like Auron that much. It's not that I dislike Auron by any means, it's just if I had to choose any other character, I would choose most other characters over Auron. Right? I do like Auron's story as a concept, however. I think the boss and employee romance, the big tough guy who gets soft for one person and one person only, is really interesting. I do like that as a trope. I like the secret life of crime thing. I like all that stuff. But nothing really stands out to me with Auron. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's phenomenally voiced, his appearance is really pretty, and, as always, Yuri does a great job at writing for him and voicing him and whatnot. But he's just not very special to me. However, when doing this thinking that I've been doing recently, I had this realization that Auron's not a very socially mature person. When it comes to his socialization skills, he is very, very far behind his peers. Which you wouldn't really think of when you think, oh, he's the CEO of a company. He has to talk to people all the time and, stuff like that. And in a professional setting, Auron is not behind anyone. Actually, he's probably way ahead of everyone else. He's been doing this for quite a while now, we can assume. And, he's very good at it. He's very good at what he does professionally. But obviously, from what we see with Auron, he's very far behind his peers when it comes to emotional connections, to socializing outside of the workplace, and even socializing in the workplace about anything other than work, right? And it's not, like, revolutionary, I don't think. This concept is very easily observed, right, if you think about Auron's character very much, but I don't know, it came to me really weirdly. I just think it's really interesting that Auron was thrust into a business and being an adult, I guess, very, very quickly. He didn't have a lot of trial and error like most people tend to have. Auron had to grow up very quickly, so to speak. And I don't mean that in the sense of, like, he lost his childhood, because from what we know of, Auron probably had a pretty decent childhood. His mom and Faust's dad didn't become a thing until, I want to assume, his teenage years, right? Or at least preteen years, probably. You know, he was probably over the age of at least 10 when they became a couple, and I think they married, if I remember correctly, so married or whatever. We don't know exactly what his age is, or at least if we do, I don't remember it. But that's still a lot of childhood, right? But I do imagine Auron had like a decent childhood. I mean, this may be projecting, but I feel like Auron probably did have to grow up pretty quickly, even in his like younger days, because he was a kid to a single mom, right? We don't know a lot about his mom, and like what his childhood was like in general, other than in preparation for taking over the business and the crime stuff. But a lot of children to single parents do have to grow up very quickly. And especially, well, I don't think especially, but I know from personal experience as a child of a single parent, you do have to grow up very quickly. And he was an only child, so he was probably left alone to his own devices for a long time. He was forced to be alone and be comfortable being alone. And I think that does translate into later aspects of his life too, because he's never really had someone to connect with, as far as we're aware of. His only connection was his mom, and when he had Faust and Faust's dad, he wasn't even really allowed to connect with them in a way that is meaningful. But back to my previous point, even though Auron may not have had to grow up in the traditional sense very quickly, at least not apart from what I just said, he did lose all of his becoming an adult stages, right? If I'm remembering correctly, Auron took over the company before he would have gone to college. Or at the same time that he would have gone to college, right? If I'm remembering correctly, Faust has a line in one of the videos where he says that Auron didn't go to college. And that's really interesting to me because even though college is a struggle for a lot of people, college is normally looked at as a very important stage of someone's life, or at least college age. That's when you're becoming an adult for real. That's when you're socializing the most. That's when you're learning how to be a person on your own. Because up until then, most people have a parent with them, or at least a guardian of some sort who is, for lack of a better term, controlling a big portion of their life, whether they like it or not, right? And I think that Auron missing out on that, it really affected him. I think it would really affect anyone, honestly. But especially Auron, who we know for a fact didn't really like his stepfather, who either didn't feel like he was allowed to, or genuinely wasn't allowed to be really, really close to Faust, and who probably at the time realized that he wouldn't be able to be as close to his mom as he used to, or maybe even ever was. He started isolating himself, right? He pushed away any connection that he did have, and any connection that he could have had was absolutely denied to him, because he was supposed to take over the company now. He was supposed to take over all of... I can't remember if the guy has a name, or if he doesn't, and if he does have a name, I don't remember it, but Auron's stepfather's crime stuff, too. Auron was forced into making very adult decisions very quickly, right? And so he missed out on any type of personal connection he could have had until Rook came along. And I think it really did stunt him in his social development. And you wouldn't think of it at first glance. Auron's, a smooth talker. He is very poised in the way that he talks. He seems like a person that is very good at speaking. But when you actually get him in a situation that is, like, personal, And I don't even mean, like, talking about personal things. I just mean not business related, or not treated as a business transaction, which you do see him treating a lot of instances, even with Rook. You see him treating a lot of their interactions as a business transaction, less like two friends hanging out, two lovers hanging out. It's more of a business transaction. And any situation that he seems to, like, slowly be dropping his walls to be being more personal, he's really awkward. He's really, for lack of a better word, he's really cringy, right? And I personally like to think that that's intentional by Yuri. I like to think that he really did think about it and, like, think about how Auron would be socially stunted because of how he was raised and how he had to grow up and, like, become an adult really fast. He doesn't know how to form adult connections, or even, like, personal connections, because he hasn't had the ability to do that not only in so long, but I feel like he may have never been able to have those type of connections, right? And I don't know. I just think it's really interesting that Auron is, like, I don't know. I feel like I'm very like that in a way. I haven't had the opportunity to connect socially with people my age for a very long time because of reasons that I won't go into, but it's really interesting to see someone portrayed as basically having their first real connection with someone. At least real connection with someone in a very long time. Of course, Auron could have had, like, a best friend growing up or something like that, but we never see him mention it, at least as far as I remember. It could be wrong, but I don't remember him mentioning it, and I feel like, I don't know, it's really interesting to see what direction Yuri might take Auron's inadequate levels of social interaction, right? He's a recluse, basically, and we know that to be fact. He is a recluse. He's someone that has very little social interaction, and he's only started to have a bit more social interaction because of Rook. And I don't know, it's really interesting to me to think about some of the lines that he has, in the sense of, is he literally just someone struggling to communicate, or were these just put in to be funny? Because I really hope that Yuri added some of the lines that he did because he was actually thinking about how someone who has not had a real social bond in a long time would communicate, and how their communication skills and social skills would be stunted because of that lack of bond and lack of people around them to talk to. Because I can't think of a line off the top of my head, and I haven't watched the Auron videos in a while, at least not all the way through, but there are so many lines that I remember hearing, and I'll hear them, and I'll just have to pause the video, and I'll roll my eyes, because they're just so, they're weird, they're edgy, they're cringe, you know? They're lines that are just like, why would you put that in the video? But if you actually think about it, some of these lines would make sense for him, because Auron, in a way, hasn't moved on socially past his early teenage years, you know? Because we can assume, his late teenage years and early 20 years, from his, like, late teenage years to now, currently, because I actually don't remember if he has a canon age, and if he does, how old he is. I'm sure he has a canon age. Side note, Yuri did those character profiles. I saw all of them, and then I immediately threw all of the knowledge on them out the window. So I don't remember anything on them. But I think he does have a canon age, and I want to say it's, like, late 20s, maybe early 30s, but I feel like early 30s is pushing it. I think it's late 20s. But from his late teen years to where he is now, he has had no connections, no personal growth outside of maybe his writing. He doesn't have hobbies and he certainly doesn't have people to share his hobbies with. He's stuck in a way, at least on a personal level, he's stuck in a way. Because, like, yeah, Auron is a very talented businessman. He's very talented at crime stuff, or whatever he does, you know? He's very good at faking it, too, I think. When it comes to talking to him, he sounds very poised and put together, like I said earlier, but I just think when you actually boil it down to who he is as a person, and when he does start to talk and open up as a person and less as a CEO, less as a crime boss, less as a, you know, worker in a big company, there's not a lot of him there, you know? And I don't mean that in a way of, like, he's not a fledged out character, because he is. He's very clearly a very fledged out character. He has a lot of personality to him. But as a person, I don't think he has a lot there, because he's just never gotten to experience that. He's never gotten to, you know, he's never gotten to grow as a person. He's never gotten to socialize with other people and figure out who he is. And I really do hope that Yuri will explore, to some extent, him just getting to be a person, you know? Whether or not Yuri decides to wrap up his series with a neat little bow and be like, oh, and he quit crime for Rook, and they ran off and got married. You know, I don't expect Yuri to do that with his character. I don't see it going in that direction, but who knows, maybe. But I would really love to see some, like, personal development for Auron because of Rook, and, like, social growth, especially, because I know that socialization is extremely important to people, and as someone who hasn't done a lot of socialization, and who is probably very stunted socially when it comes to talking with people my age, and talking with people outside of, like, a professional setting, because I am personally very good at talking business with people. I'm just not exactly good at connecting with people. And I think Auron, like I said, is very similar in that regard. I would love to see some growth with him because of Rook. Maybe him stepping out of his comfort zone and, like, even if it's just with them and not with anyone else, even if it's just something as simple as him dropping less cringy lines that make him sound like an edgy 13-year-old, you know? I would love to see some, like, growth and development through him that make it seem less like I would love to see him struggle less, is what I'm trying to say. I would love to see him, you know, get to really develop a personality that I think he is severely lacking, not because of, like, lack of thought for the creator, but just because as a person, at Auron's core, as a person, as a character, he doesn't have a lot there. He's just, I think I'm struggling to put this into words. But I feel like as a person, Auron hasn't had the opportunity to be a person. He wasn't allowed to. He hasn't been allowed to in a very long time. So maybe bonding with Rook will help him find himself in a way. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in some way that was the way that Yuri did go with him as a character and Auron's series, and maybe any tie-ins with, like, Faust's series. But I would really love, specifically, to see Auron learn how to socialize in a more normal way, if that makes sense. Not that there's, like, anything weird or abnormal about the way that he communicates now, but, like I said, it feels very stunted. So I would love to see him, like, put closer to being on par with people in his age range to be, like, a social, functional person when it comes to building relationships. Maybe not even building relationships, but, like, talking with other people his age. And I want to end this video by saying I don't mean any of this in a mean way. Like I said throughout this video, I am also someone that struggles with, like, communication and being, like, acting my age, I guess, in a way when it comes to talking to people. So I don't mean this in a mean way. If you relate to Auron because he's kind of awkward and cringy and edgy or whatever, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not trying to make fun of Yuri because of that. I'm not trying to, like, be mean to him. I think, honestly, I would not be surprised at all if he put these in there intentionally to, like, showcase everything that I'm trying to say in this video. I wish that, like, I wish he would use it, even if it was unintentional or if it was intentional. I don't care what it was, but I really want to see him use Auron to his fullest potential, because Auron is such an interesting character, and even though I have such a mixed feelings and, like, almost hatred for him sometimes, he really is unique, and I personally do relate to just not only having to grow up very quickly, but being stunted when it comes to socializing with your peers. And I would love to see that touched on more in his series. It's just, I don't know, he's really interesting, and I think that it would be really cool to see an audio roleplay about this big tough guy take a direction like that, where it's just like, yeah, he had to grow up way too fast, and now he's learning to actually be a functional human instead of just being all business all the time. And, like, I think it would be really interesting to see him try to balance that, Auron the character, not Yuri the creator, Auron try to balance that with, like, still being involved in, like, the crime stuff that he has to do, right? Because I feel like that is something that's holding him back so much as a person, and that's not, like, surprising if you're involved in, like, an organized crime group, especially if you're in charge of an organized crime group. That's gonna, like, stunt what you can and cannot do, and stunt you as a person, because you can't change too much, or else you're going to ruin what you're doing in this crime organization. But I'd love to see him be a functional member of society instead of this creepy guy that lives in a penthouse that never talks to anyone and only comes out for work, you know? I think it would be really interesting to see what direction his story could be taken in. If he was, like, I don't want to see him, like, soften up. I don't want to see him soften up, but I want to see him, like, grow. I do. I want to see him grow. I don't want to see him change completely. But I want to see him grow. Not even so much as a character, but just as a person. I want to see him just get some of his personality back, because I think he deserves it. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for hearing my silly little rambles, and I hope that you enjoyed this somewhat. This was unscripted, and I literally just rambled, and I'm sure you could tell. But I hope you enjoy it. I really do, because I needed to put my thoughts out there about Auron, because I've been thinking about him so much lately, and he's just so interesting. Thank you for watching. Bye!